problem and that we should try to fix it, or say it is a hoax made up by China?
The latter. No, the former. Sorry, word different. The former.
Okay. Do you think that benefits you if like the global hegemon acknowledges that climate change is a problem, or like and not denying it? Do you think that benefits you?
I guess if it's just a flat default and nothing else is existing ever, then yes.
Wait. Yeah, those are the options you have. For the next 4 years, you can have America to deny climate change.
Are they gonna
Wait, holy fuck, you guys are still doing this?
But are they going to push
Yeah.
the Green New Deal? Yes or no?
What's your question?
Yeah, this has been going on for an hour.
Wait, I can't hear Cyan.
Are they going to be pushing things like the Green New Deal? Yes or no?
Let me look it up. I know he said we're going to rejoin the.
No. I just mean in this hypothetical. I'm not talking about real life. I'm just talking about in this hypothetical. Because that singular question would change my opinion fundamentally.
I mean, I'll say no. I'll say he's not pushing the Green New Deal, but
then
he's
yeah, I would vote for the Green candidate then. Because I think then I'd vote for the Green candidate then.
Okay. So, but the Green candidate can't win.
The Green, I after looking through the Green New Deal myself, I don't think the Green New Deal's effect on climate change would be that. And for what it does and what it restricts, it would be substantial enough. I think there's far better policies to push. So I think it's just a waste of people's paper.
No, this isn't.
There are
better policies.
No, my point.
There are always better policies than any other policy.
No. It's not. Right? I think it would be a net negative policy, not a positive one. That was my point.
You're just wrong.
No policy period would be better than the Green New Deal because I think it would be a net positive.
Cyan, the regulations the Green New Deal puts on agricultural industry would be a significant help to the environment.
The agricultural industry.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I'm talking about how they would implement the regulations.
Do you think that
the regulations that would be implemented are ludicrous?
They would be implemented. They would be implemented the same way existing FDA regulations are. Do you think this? Do you have an issue with? Would you rather?
I mean, a lot of the like the meat productions when it comes to like cattle and such. The only way for you to actually to support something like that is to have a less population of cattle.
Yes,
right?
That's the point.
Right. So that would
less cattle.
Right. So it would just result of people moving into different regions to have those cattle elsewhere.
Do you mean outside the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm talking about outside the U.S.
Yes. Why would they? No. Most people are not going to move outside the U.S. so they can have more.
Cattle industries do. Yes.
Okay.
Literally the Amazon.
Would also the
Amazon.
Like FDA regulation also prevents imports. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
But it's still just because it regulates imports does not change the fact that these imports still happen.
Wait. The imports don't at a mass scale happen.
No, but the cattle would. Other countries
regulations are beneficial for people's health. It's just wrong. Holy shit!
Change the thing, though.
You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
I do know what I'm fucking talking about.
No, you are completely fucking illiterate on the subject.
Okay,
the
if
idea
someone moves to a different country and starts selling to other countries besides the US, just because that doesn't affect the US doesn't mean it.
Absurd! Holy fucking shit!
Are you saying that a bunch of companies moving out of the US, just because it's not being imported to the US, doesn't change, and it's pointing to other countries outside the US?
Demand. Holy fucking shit! If you can't sell your product to 300 million people, then yeah, it kind of does have a global effect.
Right. But again, if the net profit is higher to go to the Amazon and sell more beef to other countries, people are going to go do the Amazon thing. It's the fundamental problem with the profit incentive.
Hey, Cyan, it's not more profitable to sell it to the Amazon than it would be to sell it to the Amazon and the US.
No, the cattle ranches are in the Amazon.
It doesn't matter where the fuck they are because
yes, it is because the laws in Brazil are different to that of the US.
300 million people. Nope, it would stop 300 million people from buying those products.
Right, but that's still you understand that you understand that the cattle industry in Brazil is one of the biggest and most heavily criticized industries.
Cyan, it doesn't fucking matter if there's less demand for a product. There's going to be less
In
supply for a product.
America, yes, but that still doesn't just eliminate demand elsewhere. Just
So it
because there's less.
eliminates shrinks it, Cyan. It makes the demand lower.
Right, but if the net gain, right, is still more if it were like if you have to deal with the FDA regulation. Let me finish my point.
It doesn't matter what the consequences. Your point.
Let me
It doesn't
finish
matter what
my
the
point.
consequences. You can
What's
keep
my
saying
point
it, but
then?
it doesn't matter.
Right? What's
It
my
doesn't
point?
matter what
If
your
you don't
if
understand, if
is
you
false.
understand my point, what's my
If
point?
no consequent of the if the consequent of your if the conditional is false, then the consequent doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
I'm saying if you say like if the sky is red, then we'd have a lot of what the therefore is. Doesn't matter what the else is or whatever. The consequent itself, the conditional, isn't true. So it doesn't matter what the conclusion is. If you base an argument off of false presuppositions, off of things that aren't true, you can lead to false conclusions. So I don't need to wait for you to like spell out the entire argument. You've already said something wrong.
All right. So what's the flaw that I'm getting wrong?
So the flaw you're getting wrong is the idea that like a decrease in demand for one country would lead to like an increase in demand in other places. It wouldn't. Like people aren't going to suddenly get bigger. People aren't going to get. People aren't going to get bigger stomachs.
No, you just outright ignored my point.
People aren't going to get
So
bigger.
okay, no, you're no. Okay, I'm doing your own logic against you. You're wrong. You're wrong here. You're wrong here. There are more people globally than there are in the US. Meaning, you can sell to more people if you move out of the US, right? And just ignore this regulation period.
Then why aren't they doing that anyway?
They do that. They fucking do that.
Cyan.
Then it wouldn't matter.
Wait,
Wait,
so how
Cyan.
is the Green New Deal making that worse?
Because you put more regulation, more companies move to the Amazon, thus more trees get cut down for space for cattle, so the industry expands in that region.
No,
so
but
yes,
if there's less demand, then they're not going to expand. If there's less demand, they're not going to expand.
But there isn't less demand. There's only a decrease in demand in the US. But
That would be a
decrease
of less people
exactly.
If
If there's less demand in the US, then they're going to import or export less of their product. So they're not going to expand if there are fewer customers.
There's more. Okay, so if you're in the US, right, and you have to hypothetical time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the regulation in the US is high enough that having a cost and say you sell international and the cost is so high to do it in the US that you almost have a net loss, right? Even though you're selling internationally and you're dealing with the tariffs that way, right? Moving to a country, right, that you still gain, if you gain a profit from that, that's still preferable to ignore the demand in another country if it gives you a higher profit. Yes or no?
If it becomes unprofitable, then you're not going to export it to the American market.
If it becomes unprofitable, they're going to move to other countries. That's my point.
You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, Cyan.
Okay, so there just isn't cattle ranches. So there isn't ranches being moved to the Amazon.
Nobody's saying that. You're not listening to the fucking points at hand because you're just too stupid to fucking hear them. Cyan, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna spell this out very clearly for you. If the demand is something like 7 billion, you have 7 billion people and they're eating cattle, and then you take 300 million away, the demand globally goes down as well.
Okay.
America is on the globe. It's part of the globe. America's not in space. It's on fucking Earth.
Yes, I know it's on fucking Earth, but that wasn't my point. If the profit,
you literally
said that
said that the demand in the US goes down, the demand in the world goes down. You have no idea.
If it wasn't more profitable for companies to do this, they wouldn't do it.
Cyan.
If it wasn't is it more profitable to go do this in the US than it is?
Currently, it's more profitable in the US. And it'd be more profitable to sell
why is there thousands of American cattle companies?
You know why, Cyan? Do you know why it's more profitable in the US?
Cyan,
do you know why it's more profitable in the US?
You still didn't answer my question.
Cyan, do you know why it's more profitable in the US?
That doesn't answer my question. Answer the question. You're ignoring the question.
What is your dumbass question? Tell it to
what's the
me.
I
fucking
I'm the
literally
econ
said
dude.
if it's more profitable in the US, why are thousands of American cattle companies still moving overseas preemptively?
In order to increase their profits if they believe
Thank
that the
you.
level of capital or the cost of labor is going to be lower. Yes.
Thank you.
Cyan. So in some instances,
So we never disagreed with that.
Cyan, the ones that aren't here, the ones that are moving overseas, it's more profitable for them. But the ones that
Yes.
are here, it's more profitable for them to stay.
Right, but that doesn't. That's because of
Fucking idiot.
that's because of policies within the US. But a lot of that's because of subsidies and such, and it only applies to a certain amount of companies. When
So
it's
even
in companies like
nope,
Amazon,
not just subsidies, Cyan. Not just subsidies,
okay,
but
go on. What
import
is it?
costs,
Tyson,
shipping
go on.
costs. Shipping
Explain.
cost is massive overseas. For a company of that size, shipping that much fucking meat in, yeah, it would be kind of fucking pricey to ship shit in overseas. So a lot of companies don't
Okay,
have the ability to do this. A lot of companies just stay in
yeah,
the
a lot of
US.
smaller. It would only really apply to smaller companies, though. Larger businesses would move overseas, which is the issue. It's not smaller companies that were the
Completely
issue.
irrelevant.
What
Irrelevant,
do you
Cyan.
mean it's completely irrelevant?
Completely irrelevant because they're
Explain
moving
to me
overseas.
why just
Cyan.
moving the issue overseas is
Irrelevant because
irrelevant.
they're moving overseas. They're moving overseas with a cost they're incurring that it wouldn't be with the regulations.
Okay, but that still doesn't change the fact that they moved. They still
Yeah,
moved, and they're getting
change the
away.
fact that they moved.
Okay.
Matters
There's
they
a
moved.
There's a
Completely fucking
line. Many companies will accept regulation within a company, within a nation, regardless of what that company does. But there will be a line, right?
Yeah.
When you go to Brazil, right, there's far less, even before they went to the US, there's far less regulation in Brazil than there is in the US.
Yes. I
So
don't give a fuck.
it's less costful to run that there than it is in the US, right?
Cyan,
Yes
this
or
is
no? Answer
completely
the question.
irrelevant. This is
What do you mean it's
completely
completely
fucking
irrelevant?
irrelevant.
If
I'm
these
gonna
major
try my best.
companies are producing this amount of,
Cyan, if the
you're such an
Cyan,
arrogant cunt.
holy shit, you're so fucking stupid. You are
I'm not
profoundly fucking
okay, but
stupid.
you still haven't
Dumbest
proven
person
why.
ever had the pleasure of talking to on this VC. You are
Then maybe
incredibly
you should
fucking.
answer the questions I'm
I'm
asking
trying
you.
my
Rather
fucking
than just
best to
going Cyan,
shut the fuck up. Never
Cyan,
stop.
Wait,
Cyan.
Cyan, how about this deal? If I hear you interrupting, I server mute you
I'm not.
until. Wait, 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 wait. Are you gonna let me finish? So, wait, Cyan. This is cool and all, but like, next time that like I hear you interrupting Landon, I'll just server mute you until Landon's done. Okay?
Okay. But can I ask if he keeps going Cyan while I'm talking and he's asking me a question, can you mute him as well?
Sure.
Sure. I'll mute
Thank you. Right, can I finish my initial point?
Yes, you can.
Okay, he's muted. Okay. So my initial point was if the cost of moving to these overseas is still going to reach a higher profit due to these regulations, because it's not just like they're moving to a country with the same regulation. The costs are far lower. Just because a tariff in one country is like that doesn't mean that it's going to be like that for other countries. For example, tariffs in other countries that are importing from Brazil are a lot cheaper to certain countries like Britain and a lot of countries within the Commonwealth because they have agreement with that country that lowers the tariffs because they are quote unquote supporting the local economic ecosystem. They've done the same thing with Cuba recently, right? So these cattle companies are moving to there. The big companies, the main companies are causing this CO2 in the first place and they're just moving it elsewhere. And not only doing that, but producing more CO2 in the process because they're allowed to do that, cutting down more of the rainforest as well because they're able to purchase more of it, as well as also producing and as well as also causing the extinctions of other species within the Amazon. So not only have you just moved the issue elsewhere, but you've also caused a modicum of other issues in the process. Now you can speak. Hello?
You there, bud?
Yeah, are you going to argue against that or no?
Yeah, no, here's the issue. That whole spiel was completely irrelevant, with maybe the rare exception of like you made the claim that like a rough argument of if regulations in other countries are weaker, and we have stronger regulations here, then those companies will move to those other countries because of the pressure there. Yes, this is objectively true. Yeah, if we have stronger regulations, then some companies will be pressured into moving out. But this wouldn't really be an argument against those stronger regulations, because those stronger regulations could still be used to prevent a huge portion of the market from consuming some bad product. Some bad product might be something like some product that happens to be made with huge amounts of CO2 and methane emissions, like, for example, cattle. Okay, that's my argument. You can go ahead, Cyan, if you think you have.
My main issue with that is, if your goal is to reduce CO2, which the Green New Deal is, right? If your main goal is that, moving to another country may lower the CO2 production in your country, but it's still going to increase the CO2 in another country. It's fundamentally irrelevant to that, right? Sorry, speak Gish galloping a bit much.
Okay,
Ugh.
so yeah,
Sorry.
so oh, you're still going?
Yeah, I was still going. I was just taking a breath.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you're still having these problems in other countries, like the production of CO2, you fundamentally haven't changed anything. And as I pointed out, you're still having additional issues on top of that. If you like in Brazil, it's got to such a level that the European Union is actually having sanctions on the Brazilian government over this. Yeah, because the Brazilian government still makes a profit from this, they're just ignoring them. The companies are still moving there. If the companies didn't produce the profit, not only they wouldn't go there. And just because it affects the US doesn't change the fact that they're producing more CO2 as a result of this regulation. In my mind, it's better to produce a regulation that a company will implement as well as doing these things, right? Than to implement a regulation that just makes the situation worse in other countries, not your country. Spiel over.
Yeah, so you kind of rambled there for a bit,
No, I
but
didn't have that.
a couple of things you said were really, really, really fucking stupid.
Mhm.
First one is the idea that like the agricultural portion of the Green New Deal is to reduce CO2. No, it's not. That's just not
No,
true.
no,
It's to reduce
CO2 is
methane.
sorry.
It's to reduce methane.
Yeah,
That would be the
that was
primary.
Cyan.
Yeah. So the other one would be the idea that moving to a new country, or if you place regulations, they'll move to a new country, and thus they'll have the same amount of CO2 emissions in those new countries. This is not true.
I
It's
said
not.
more.
No, Cyan, please. Moving to a new country wouldn't necessarily have the same amount of CO2 emissions, because you just cut out like 300 million people out of their market. So they're going to be producing less meat in these new countries. So necessarily you wouldn't have the same amount of CO2 emissions. So go ahead, Cyan.
Here we go. Go ahead.
I mean, you can see that's not the case, though. You could see that's not the case. Like you can see, like, have you seen the industrial farms that are in Brazil currently? That was recently until excavated Amazon forest. They're far, far, far bigger than the ones that are in the US, and they are producing far, far, far more methane than in the US. And I think there must be a graph on this about the amount of agricultural CO2 that sorry CO2 agricultural greenhouse gases. I'm just gonna say green gas. Is that better? Can I say green gas? I'm asking
You
a
can say
question.
greenhouse gases.
Okay, so I'll just say green gas because you'll know what I mean.
Okay.
That they're still producing these at a higher amount. I'm still yet to see evidence that they're producing less by being there. Because meat consumption globally is still, a thing, and it's still increasing. The US is just a massive. I'm not disagreeing that the US isn't a massive consumer, right? But I think having the US having less meat is probably a positive thing. But anyway, but the rest of, like, say, Europe, for example, is also a massive consumer. And there's actually more people living in Europe than there are living in the US. So even if you shut down all of the imports in the US, it would be more profitable to move to Brazil because you can sell to more people in Europe than you can in the US. That's just.
Okay, so are you done?
I'm done, yeah.
Okay, so you started rambling again. You said like the same thing like several times. Let's go over a couple of them. You said you can see that's not the case in response to my argument. Have you seen their farms? They're big. They're big farms that produce more CO2. But they also produce more meat. So that means per meat, per the amount of meat they're producing, they might be producing about the same amount, unless you have a source that says they produce more per meat. In which case, we then control for like we have to look at the amount of like people who would no longer be eating that meat. If you want to know if they're actually still producing like net more by having a regulation.
Can I just interject for a moment?
Go ahead.
What I said with that point, I've instantly just debunked it in my head because it's a fallacy. So I'm just gonna concede that that point was fucking stupid because it was a plain fallacy. My main point from that spiel was probably that there's more people, more consumers purchasing meat in Europe and overseas combined than there is in the US. So regardless if you shut down the borders and shut down the tariffs, it would still be more profitable to move to Brazil to get these productions.
Do you want me to debunk that?
I would like you to debunk that specific thing. Yeah.
Okay. So no, so this is also like fallacious reasoning. So the idea that there's more consumers purchasing meat in Europe and overseas combined than in the U.S. doesn't really matter. If there was only one person in the U.S. consuming meat, then cutting the U.S. out of the market would still be a decrease to the total size of the market. Because currently they're also still allowed to sell in Europe and overseas, just like they're allowed to sell in the U.S.
Oh yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
So a ban on meat consumption or on meat imports, like the same way you do an FDA ban.
I meant
or
like
like
I
even a limit,
mean
like
I just mean ban on meat. Period.
even
Just to clarify.
even a limit would be enough to decrease the amount of CO2 being emitted.
Right.
Regardless of the size of the U.S. population.
See, even I'm just historically speaking, even if that's how that, I don't agree that that's what would happen. I don't think that there would be a decrease because there has been an increase in production in these countries since regulation has been implemented. Even before the Green New Deal, this has been a case. Like it's been a big thing in British politics right now as well. Even though British politics is like what? This very small sector of beef production. That's more just local economy stuff. But anyway, yeah, horse meat meme. Anyway, so it is a thing that does happen, and it is increasing the production, and we can see this with the amount of methane and greenhouse gases that are being produced by agriculture, and the increase that influence it's having, even with these regulations being put in place. It's still increasing. There's still a net gain to it, and you can caution. There's lots of reasons for that. I think the main one would probably be population growth. However, as I pointed out, these regulations just they. My point wasn't that that just moving to this will produce more. It was more so that by them moving, they're just previous regulations that was put onto these companies that was restricting that are no longer valid. They don't need to follow those regulations anymore. So the previous regulations that was restricting that are now increasing. I don't think this is a bigger one as population growth, but I definitely think it is a influence to it. methane production of agriculture is still going to increase, but I think the pie, I think it's like what? I think it was like 35% in 2010, and then it's grown to like 38% now of the amount of production. This could be me reading the data completely wrong, of course, but I would need someone to explain why that's the case, if that was the case. See, now that you're not constantly, I'm just gonna. That was the argument. I am finished the argument, but now that we're not constantly yelling at each other about fucking me getting pissed off at you going Cyan constantly, see, we're having a much better conversation. Thank you,
I
Blah.
disagree. I disagree. You're rambling a lot, and it's taking way longer. But
I mean,
okay,
it's a lot more. It's a lot more. It's less angrily screeching than anything.
yeah, that is not really a huge deal for me. This is
More
just
making
slower.
the more
So,
ground has been
okay,
made with
Cyan,
fire. By the
please,
way,
Cyan.
that's
So back on topic. You said historically that isn't the case. That's not true. There are plenty of examples historically of like product bans that caused a decrease in the amount of demand of a product. A great example would be lead paint. Lead paint globally is produced less than it was when it was banned in many countries.
right. Next point.
So that was it.
Was that the? What about the other point?
Oh, which one?
Fuck. The point about how it's globally more companies are moving here as well, and it is, and the fact that it's also on the production thing where it's producing the percentage of agricultural production in greenhouse gases is increasing.
Yeah, so that's completely irrelevant. Basically, you're just sort of like injecting correlation here and just like assuming that it's causally linked.
Could you explain why? Could you explain why it's correlation, not okay, correlation fallacy, or whatever you want to call it? I don't give a shit. But could you explain why they aren't correlated?
Well, they are correlated. They're just not causally linked.
Okay,
So
okay, causation. All right. Okay.
They're correlated. Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. They're correlated because of the growth in population.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So that means if we
well,
didn't have those,
I did say that was a major factor.
we
I
didn't
did
have
say that
those.
was
Excuse me.
the biggest factor. My point was
Yeah.
that these sorts of factors are also increasing it. So even my point, even if that was like the smallest case, my point would still stand that it is still increasing it, and it's still a net positive on that growth on that part of growth in the production.
So I don't know why you think that the population growth wouldn't be. I mean, what you're trying to do right now is you're doing like a temporal you're doing like a temporal kind of correlation where you're saying in like one case in one case here we have like this, there wasn't a ban and it was lower, and then afterwards we passed the ban and it was higher. But that's not really how data works. You can't do things like that. You're supposed to what you need if you want to like
It
if
was
you want to really know
I
if
can
it
only
works, is you kind of have to compare it based on like controls. Sociology is really hard to do that with because sociology is really complicated and it's hard to make controls. But in the case of like a product ban, we know generally that these do work to decrease demand, in specifically in the markets where the product ban is implemented. And obviously, in the case of the U.S., that would be 300 million people. That's a lot of people who no longer will have a demand, who will no longer have as much demand for a product. Because of this, where there's going to be less produced necessarily than there would be if there wasn't the ban there.
okay. That wasn't. Fuck. Um. Right. Okay. Can you explain why companies are still moving to? Wait. I wasn't okay. I wasn't really comparing um American companies. I imagine just going by how the data is here as well. I imagine it would be a similar case there. That's a big assumption to make, but still, um, when it comes to the production here, there definitely is a correlation with British companies producing these gases on an increased amount when they moved overseas. there's definitely a correlation there, 100%.
Okay, correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation, though. That's
Yeah,
what we're trying
and,
to prove.
and that's why I was asking, could you explain why that's an issue?
So the issue is like you don't have a reason for it to be causally linked. So we can look at like
the reason that it's causally the reason that I did say there was a reason, it's because of policy being passed and the increasing of British companies after this bill was passed had increased drastically higher than the amount prior.
Yeah, but how do we know that's causally linked and not just correlation?
If you can point to something it is linked to, that there is a massive spike after these companies moved overseas. If you could propose an alternative, I'd be interested.
Just for the record, you're talking about a spike in CO2, not a spike in meat production?
No. I am speaking of methane. Yeah.
Okay, so you're speaking of a spike in greenhouse gas emissions, not a spike in meat production.
It was general agriculture industries, so it could just be them growing rice as well, but agriculture industries as well.
Okay, but it's a spike in greenhouse gas production, not a spike in like food production.
No, it had nothing to do with the production. Like I don't know anything about how much food we import.
So
I was referring to British companies specifically.
yeah, that's not what I was asking. That's not what I was asking.
Provided those companies aren't lying, that's how much they are producing.
Yeah, but I'm not asking about how much. I'm telling you, like, this doesn't change the fact that there would be a decrease in demand for a product. So it's like the I don't know what your point is.
Right, but even if there was a decrease in demand, there still is an increase of this methane production as well. There's still an increase there. Most of it's, I think, what was it? Chicken farming. It was like a obscene amount of chickens that. Hang on, I need to find the specific graph because it was a YouTube video that explained it.
Okay. Yeah, I need to see the specific data you're reading from because I'm not sure the point you're trying to prove with it.
He put the graph on the video. I would need to find. God, what was the YouTuber name? Right, I'll concede. But once I find the YouTuber, I will send you the video. And
Okay.
then we can continue to discuss the topic.
Okay. Have a good one.
But as of now, I've conceded.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. I mean, ignoring my preference for ecology. I mean, ignoring the ecology reasons behind that. Back to the original topic. There's still no political effect of the Green New Deal being on the growth of anarchists.
So
I'm pretty sure there would be a decrease.
So what is the reason you want anarchy to be a thing? Like, why do you want anarchy to be present? I'm also an anarchist, but I want to know what you're. I'm also an anarchist, but I want to know why you think anarchy is better than not having it.
There's lots of reasons.
Okay, what are some examples? Do you think it's like it would make people better off?
Mostly because of an emotional appealing stuff. So nothing that would really be applicable to a debate.
Well, I mean, emotions still matter, obviously, for like morals and stuff. You probably care.
I don't like appealing to. No, it's more so I don't give a shit how I feel when it comes to this sort of thing, and I don't think other people should.
Yeah.
Give a shit what I feel, what my personal opinion, and what my personal opinion on how government should run. I think it should be factually accurate.
Yeah, but your facts, it doesn't matter what the facts are unless you have like a reason for what kind of goal you want. Like if you say that like I want to decrease CO2 emissions.
The reason I go for the reason I support
Cyan, please, Cyan, please. If somebody says something like Cyan, please, excuse me. So if somebody says something like I want to decrease CO2. Yeah, it's okay. So if I say something along the lines of like I want to decrease CO2 emissions and this is how we can do it, and then somebody else just says something like actually, oh he's gone. Oh, there he is. You there? Cyan?
There was like a really bad delay in echo.
Okay, let's see if it works out
I
this
think that might
time.
have been like a lag spike or something.
Okay,
What was
so
it?
let's see if you can hear. So if I say something like this is how we can decrease CO2 emissions, and somebody else says I don't care about CO2 emissions, then at that point you don't really have an argument anymore because you don't have a reason for what you believe. You kind of have to have something deeper than just sort of like I want anarchy, and then no reason for why you want anarchism.
The reason I want anarchism is because I see the state as an unjust hierarchy, and I think that is an
Okay,
appeal to an emotion.
you see the state as
And
an
I think,
unjust
and I think,
hierarchy, but why do you
why do I view it as an unjust hierarchy? That's irrelevant to the actual original question.
Well, it's not. What's the point of asking you this is so we can get down to sort of like what are the things that me and you both agree on that we can derive other ideas from, right?
What form
What
of
is our
anarchy do you believe in? What here's a way of easily grasping that, right? What form of anarchy do you believe in? Because
well,
that correlates to what
I'm
you see as an unjust hierarchy, and that would change. So
so
yeah,
yeah,
can
I'm
I've stopped.
okay. So if you were asking me what form of anarchy do I believe in, I believe in the sort of like primarily in the etymological sense of the word, and also in the sort of like classical anarcho communist sense of the word. So for me, the most important aspect is sort of like the reduction of hierarchy, so that other people can people can more equally fulfill their goals. That's the form of anarchy that I believe in.
You cut out on the people bit. I just got people, and you cut out. Because
Okay, yeah,
people what?
I was saying that people should be able to have equal
Oh,
power in being able to fulfill their goals in a sort of like broad sense, generally.
okay. I guess we don't really disagree on that sense. Is though I don't. The equal power thing is probably what I disagree with. I see it as more people have an opportunity to strive and grow rather than being fundamentally restricted by something that's clearly unjust and
Okay,
uh, inherently in violation of one's born rights. Well, that's
so the
getting into the
reason
more
you're an
spiritual
anarchist then,
nature of it. So, huh?
so the reason you're an anarchist then is because you think people are better off with anarchy than they are without it.
Sorry.
So the reason you're an anarchist is because you think anarchism will make people better off, right? It'll bring more well-being.
More so. I mean, it's less that I think that's what will happen with people because I don't think that's what will happen with people like instantly. I think, I mean, over time, I think so. But when it for the initial thing, for the initial change, I think that it will give the most opportunity for things as opposed to restriction on these things. Does that make sense? I'm
Okay,
playing explaining this very poorly.
so then yeah, I'm not. I'm just
It has
gonna
nothing to
have
do
to
with
ask
other
you.
people.
So,
Sorry?
would you say? I'm just gonna have to ask again, I guess, and get it. See if I can get an answer this time. Do you think that? So you said it has nothing to do with people. Is
Mm,
that what? Did I hear that right?
yes. Or it
Okay, so
does. That's not
if
true. It does. It does. It's just
yeah,
it's less of a group of people and more just on the individual level. If that makes sense.
all of the individuals though, right? Not just one individual.
More so, more it. See, because I don't think. Are you an individualist? Question.
I
Because
think the
it would
word
just be a
kind
lot easier to explain if you were.
so I think the word kind of breaks down in meaning pretty quickly. So I'm not sure. You'd have
Okay,
to specify.
philosophy, in a
In a
philosophical sense.
general sense, in a
In a
general
general
sense,
sense,
I'm an
yes.
individualist. In a general sense, I'm an individualist, but in a lot of senses, I'm a collectivist. I'm a collectivist.
Right, yeah, because I don't think that there's a contradiction between individualism and collectivism. I think both technically correlate with each other. It's when one is enforced over the other that you sort of begin to have the issues that a lot of anarchists and, in a lot of cases, capitalists and communists have with the other system, which is why they want to reinforce theirs. Blah, blah, blah. Irrelevant. But the reason it's more of just an individual level thing. I don't think that the state has any right to be doing a lot of the restrictions that it has. It just doesn't have a fundamental right to exist, if that makes sense.
Well,
It's inherently restrictive to people. Yeah, you go on.
So, do you think necessarily that like morality is based on rights and not based on like improving some kind of like scalar value? I guess.
That's why I said it was appealing to emotion, because
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, no, it is. It's emotion. Yeah, emotion's necessarily going to be like the core of most people's moral system, but that's not a bad thing though.
Yeah, I know it's not a bad thing. I am a constructivist, so I know I understand it's not a bad thing. It's just I recognize the fact that you're not going to prove your position simply just because rights exist. Because ANCAPs are fucking brain dead, and they make that argument frequently.
Yeah, so I need to know why you think these rights exist.
Why do I think these rights exist?
Mm-hmm.
Is because I think the only thing that a person can legitimately have ownership over permanently is themselves, and any occupation of themselves is their occupation. It's their property, as it were.
So in that same
to,
sense,
to ignore the capitalist connotations of that, I mean in the more mutualist sense of property, so personal property and such. So it's things you just have, rather than you have a legalist slash virtueist moralist reason to have it. It's just you have it because you are holding it currently.
okay. So do you think you have a? I'm getting some echo on your end.
Sorry, hang on. Let me just turn Discord down.
All right.
Go on.
All right. So do you think that you have a right to take somebody else's life? I'm guessing no, correct?
It's important on context.
Okay, so for you, it's not really rights based then, because the context is what matters more than anything else.
I mean, I would say you do have a right to take somebody else's life in a certain context, but again, in another context, you're also not to. So, like I said, the fundamental thing that you have is yourself. So, if you own yourself, you cannot then go on to somebody else to remain consistent with that belief. You can't just then go on to somebody else and take that thing from someone. I'd see that as a example of an unjust hierarchy, because you are deeming that person lesser than you, and you are being authoritative over that person.
So if it's dependent on context, then it's not really a right.
I agree.
Okay, so then you don't then necessarily your moral system is based on
I wouldn't really say right to take somebody's life is the right. The right is for yourself to own yourself.
Okay, so
that's the right.
Okay, so you have the right to own yourself, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, what does that really mean?
You have permanent occupancy over your body at all times. You have consciousness to express that you own this thing because you are asserting your dominance over it pretty much all the time. Even when you're asleep, that technically is the case as well. So it wouldn't just go away if you're sleeping.
Okay, so what if you were like hooked up to like some just a purely hypothetical thing. Let's imagine you're like hooked up to a bunch of life support systems and they need you to stay alive for these other like million people maybe to stay alive. In that case, do you still have a right to self-ownership? Could you still like unplug yourself from the machine, or are you like obligated to stay on?
You would still have somebody else's right does not is equal to that of somebody else's. So if you are the one that occupies that body, that's it. Nobody else has the right to tell you about that thing. I mean, from a in my set in the whole if I were to appeal to my ideals, everyone should have a choice in that matter. However, there's the ought to, like, from the moral emotional sense, is if I was in that personal situation, I would stay on the life support. However, I don't think I would force people to do that thing. If that makes sense.
So then in a case like this, you're kind of like you're not really being willing to pull the lever, I guess you could say, and let the one person suffer for like the deaths of millions.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what if it was every other person on the planet? If it was just
every other person on the planet.
Yep.
I still don't think that a collective of rights trumps that of an individual person's rights.
Okay.
Because at that point, that's just a because more people thing.
Yeah, well, that's why
Everyone's rights are equal, but that doesn't mean that more rights are more equal than others.
Okay, you said earlier that you'd be willing to pull the lever in the trolley problem, right?
I would, yes.
Okay, so you would
on a personal level, yes.
Yeah. So when you do that, you're forcing that one person to die.
No. I'm saying if I was the person that was on that chair.
Yeah, but that's not what the trolley problem is.
Oh, I would ask the person.
Okay. And what if they said no, don't pull a lever?
That's their right to do so.
Okay. So you would say that like for one person's death, you would not be willing to like kill one person to save a million.
If I wanted to apply my moralistic view consistently, yes.
Okay, so
but people aren't consistent, as I want to point out.
People aren't consistent, yeah, but they should be, right?
They should be. Yes, I agree. They should be.
You ought
They should
to
be consistent to your moral point of view. If you
Yeah.
want me to, if you want me to, I will tell you exactly what I would do in that situation. I probably would pull a lever, but
Oh, you
I
pull the
think,
lever even though you would.
But the caveat to that is, I think that I've committed one of the worst crimes that anyone can commit.
Why would you do something if you know it's morally wrong?
Would utilitarian be a good response to that?
Okay. Utilitarian would be the moral system you told me about earlier would be the wrong one.
Yes,
I would say that
I agree.
so
I can have
utilitarian.
my opinion with that is that emotionally, right? I'm a utilitarian, but
okay,
from a consistent moralist standpoint,
that's still
consistent
emotional.
to why I'm the way I am.
That's still emotional.
Okay. Rationally, I wouldn't kill the person, but irrationally, I would. If that makes sense.
So why would you irrationally kill the person but not rationally kill them? I don't understand what you mean here. Like in both cases, you're still taking your emotions, you're still taking that feeling you have, and you're still like,
I'm fundamentally asserting myself. I'm fundamentally creating a unjust hierarchy that's completely involuntary regarding that individual. I'm asserting my will upon somebody else, which I view as unjust. It's a hierarchy.
So you're a voluntarist?
Sorry?
So you're a voluntarist? You're like full on voluntarist?
That has very bad connotations.
Well, yeah, because now I don't understand why you're not a capitalist then.
Because I view capitalism as that very thing. It's inherently involuntary.
Well, it's just as voluntary by your definition of voluntary as any other one.
No, it's in.
Hey, Blah.
Oh, let me give him host and producer.
Oh, you can't talk. Okay.
No. Wait, what's the role?
You have to abandon one of them if you want to be consistent.
I'm consistently irrational, and no, because I can advocate for one thing and acknowledge the fact that I would do things against it because I'm an irrational human being. I can acknowledge the fact that I'm not perfect.
So it doesn't matter.
By me pointing out that I would do these things is pointing out that I'm an imperfect person. I'm not perfect.
Cyan. So
But
there's this idea of moral perfection, which relates in no way to your action.
there's a biological reason why I would try and save more people. There's a biological
Cyan.
intent.
That's the case for all morals and all of the claims you've made. There's a biological, neurological reason
I
for it.
know. I'm pointing out that that's
no
also the
way
case for this as
relevant to
well.
this, Cyan. This is in no way relevant to the discussion at hand. Then.
Okay. Yes, I know, but
Okay, I've got to go to the store in about 30 minutes. I'm gonna head offline.
Goodbye, friend.
Bye. Have a good one.
So is this done?
I'm having an ideological crisis. Don't leave.
Someone say that this is done.
Hi, blah.